A racist customer humiliates a black waiter, unaware of the powerful truth about him. What happens next will leave you speechless. The story begins in the heart of an elegant, high-end hotel. The lobby gleamed with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and the quiet hum of wealth and luxury. Behind the counter and scattered around the dining area were staff members who were meticulously trained to cater to their wealthy clientele. Among them was Marcus, a black waiter in his late 20s, known for his impeccable professionalism and warm demeanor. Marcus had worked hard to get where he was. Despite facing countless hurdles and prejudices, his dream of working in the hospitality industry had been achieved. To him, every guest deserved kindness, regardless of their attitude toward him. But today would test even his patience and resolve. As Marcus adjusted his uniform and prepared for his shift, a sleek black car pulled up outside the hotel. Out stepped a woman in her mid-50s, dressed in a designer outfit from head to toe. Her oversized sunglasses didn't hide the scowl plastered across her face as she barked at the valet for being too slow. The staff exchanged uneasy glances. They knew the type. The woman, Mrs. Charlotte Harrington, was a regular guest. Wealthy, entitled, and often demanding, she had a reputation for looking down on anyone she deemed beneath her. Today she was in an especially sour mood. As Charlotte strutted into the dining area, her eyes immediately scanned the room for imperfections. She snapped her fingers, loudly declaring, "I need service right now." Her tone dripped with impatience and superiority. Marcus, ever calm and composed, approached her table with a polite smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Welcome to the Grand Lux Hotel. How may I assist you today?" Charlotte removed her sunglasses slowly, revealing a piercing gaze that sized him up with disdain. "I asked for service, not whatever this is," she said, gesturing vaguely at Marcus. Her voice was sharp, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Marcus hesitated for a brief moment, his professional mask slipping just slightly. "I'm here to take your order, ma'am," he said gently, refusing to let her words break his composure. Charlotte let out a haughty laugh, waving him off like he was a pest. "Where's someone more qualified?" she sneered. "I don't want someone like you handling my food." The dining area fell silent, and Marcus could feel the eyes of the guests and his colleagues on him. A knot tightened in his stomach, but he kept his expression neutral. "I assure you, ma'am, I am fully capable of serving you," he replied, his tone steady. But Charlotte wasn't finished. She leaned back in her chair and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'm paying too much money to be served by someone like him. Where's the manager?" The humiliation was palpable, but Marcus stood firm. He refused to let her words define him. Inside, however, a storm was brewing. This wasn't the first time he had faced prejudice, but each time it cut just as deep. What Charlotte didn't know was that she was about to face a reckoning she'd never forget. The room remained tense, a heavy silence blanketing the diners as Charlotte's venomous words echoed. A few guests glanced at each other uncomfortably, unsure whether to intervene or remain silent. Marcus, standing tall despite the weight of her insult, chose dignity over confrontation. Before Marcus could respond further, the restaurant manager, Mr. Daniels, arrived, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced with concern. He had seen enough from across the room to know this was about to escalate. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Harrington," he greeted her, forcing a polite smile. "Is there something I can assist you with?" Charlotte turned to him with an exaggerated sigh of relief, as if she'd been rescued. "Finally, someone competent," she said. "I specifically requested exceptional service, and instead I got—" She gestured dismissively toward Marcus. "This. I won't tolerate being served by someone who clearly doesn't belong in a place like this." The color drained from Mr. Daniels's face, but he composed himself quickly. "Mrs. Harrington, I can assure you that Marcus is one of our most skilled and professional team members," he said firmly. his voice carrying a subtle warning. "We take great pride in our staff and their ability to provide excellent service." Charlotte waved her hand dismissively. "Spare me the lecture," she snapped. "Either assign me someone else or I'll take my business elsewhere." Marcus stood quietly, his fists clenched at his sides. His pride told him to walk away, to refuse to serve her, but his professionalism wouldn't allow it. He knew this moment wasn't just about him. It was about setting an example. "Ma'am," Marcus interjected, his voice calm but firm. "I understand if you're not comfortable with me serving you, but I promise to treat you with the same level of care and respect I offer all our guests. My only goal is to ensure you have a pleasant experience." Charlotte raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a smug smile. "Respect? You? Do you even know who you're talking to?" Marcus didn't flinch. He had heard this kind of rhetoric before, but he also knew that respect wasn't something granted by wealth or status. It was earned through actions. Mr. Daniels stepped in again, sensing the growing tension. "Mrs. Harrington, if you feel more comfortable with another server, I will accommodate your request," he said diplomatically, though his jaw tightened. "However, I must remind you that we do not tolerate discriminatory behavior in our establishment." Charlotte's expression soured, but she waved him off. "Just get it done. I have no time for moral lectures." As Marcus quietly stepped away, his colleagues offered him supportive nods. They admired his composure, though they could see the hurt in his eyes. Little did Charlotte know, her actions had set into motion a series of events that would leave her utterly unprepared. The color drained from Charlotte's face as the weight of his words sank in. She had spent the past hour belittling someone who clearly held a higher standing than she had assumed. Her voice faltered as she stammered, I didn't know." Mr. Bellamy raised a hand to silence her. "That much is clear," he said firmly. "Mrs. Harrington, this hotel prides itself on treating every guest and employee with respect. Unfortunately, your behavior today has been anything but respectful." The room was silent, every guest hanging on to Mr. Bellamy's words. Charlotte's face flushed with embarrassment as the realization of her actions washed over her. Marcus, ever composed, stepped forward. "It's all right, Mr. Bellamy. I appreciate your support, but I'd like to handle this myself." The owner nodded, stepping aside. Marcus turned to Charlotte, meeting her gaze with quiet strength. "Mrs. Harrington," he said, his voice calm but resolute, "I don't hold your words against you. But I hope this moment serves as a reminder that kindness and respect cost nothing, and yet they can mean everything." Charlotte opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. The dignity and grace with which Marcus handled the situation left her speechless. The dining room was still. The only sound was the gentle clinking of glasses as waitstaff moved through the room. All eyes were on Marcus, whose words had landed with quiet power. Charlotte, now visibly uncomfortable, shifted in her seat, grappling with the weight of the moment. Her arrogance had melted away, leaving only a shell of embarrassment and regret. Mr. Bellamy, still standing nearby, spoke once more, his tone now softer but firm. "Marcus represents the values this hotel upholds. For every guest who walks through our doors, we ask only for mutual respect. It's disappointing when those values aren't reciprocated." Charlotte's cheeks flushed a deeper shade of red. She muttered a faint, "I'm sorry," though it was unclear if her apology was directed at Marcus, Mr. Bellamy, or the room full of people who had witnessed her behavior. Marcus, ever poised, nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Harrington. I hope we can move forward with mutual understanding." But the room wasn't quite ready to let Charlotte off the hook. As she reached for her drink, a couple seated nearby spoke up. "You owe him more than an apology," said the man, his voice steady but stern. "You embarrassed him in front of all of us for no reason other than your own prejudice." The ripple of murmurs grew louder. Several other guests nodded in agreement, their faces reflecting a mix of disapproval and solidarity with Marcus. It was as if the entire dining room had collectively decided that Charlotte's behavior wouldn't go unchallenged. Charlotte, clearly shaken, set her glass down and rose to her feet. "I didn't mean to," she began, but the weight of the moment silenced her. Her usual bravado had vanished, replaced by an air of discomfort as she realized she had no excuse for her actions. Marcus stepped forward again, his voice cutting through the tension. "Mrs. Harrington," he said gently, "what's done is done. My only hope is that you'll leave here with a new perspective. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of where they come from or what they look like." Charlotte didn't respond. Instead, she gathered her belongings and left the restaurant hurriedly, her head low. The room remained quiet for a moment longer before a round of quiet applause broke out, directed not at her departure, but at Marcus's grace under pressure. As the applause subsided, Marcus returned to his duties, his calm demeanor intact. The weight of the incident still lingered, but he carried it with quiet strength. His colleagues approached him with pats on the back and murmurs of admiration. "You handled that better than anyone could," one of the servers whispered. Marcus smiled faintly, grateful for the support. Mr. Bellamy stayed behind, observing Marcus as he interacted with other guests, his professionalism unshaken. Finally, as Marcus passed by, Mr. Bellamy placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did more than stand up for yourself today," he said. "You showed everyone here what true character looks like." Marcus nodded, his voice steady. "I just hope it made a difference." And it had. The dining room buzzed with a renewed energy. Guests who had been silent observers during the altercation now engaged in conversations about prejudice and respect. The ripple effect of Marcus's grace had turned what could have been a bitter moment into a powerful lesson for everyone present. But the impact of the day wasn't limited to the dining room. Word of the incident quickly spread through the hotel staff, and even some guests shared their perspectives on social media, commending Marcus for his composure and dignity. "Sometimes the strongest person in the room isn't the loudest," one post read, accompanied by a photo of Marcus serving a table with his characteristic warmth. Days later, Charlotte Harrington returned to the hotel, but this time, her demeanor was markedly different. Dressed more modestly and without her usual air of entitlement, she approached Marcus directly. "I came to apologize," she said, her voice trembling. "I was wrong, and I treated you unfairly. I hope you can forgive me." Marcus looked at her, his expression unreadable. After a moment, he offered a small smile. "Apology accepted," he said simply. "It takes strength to admit when you're wrong." Charlotte nodded, visibly relieved, and quietly left the hotel. For Marcus, it wasn't about her apology. It was about the change it symbolized. As the weeks went on, Marcus's story became a quiet legend among the hotel staff and guests. His ability to rise above adversity and maintain his integrity inspired others to reflect on their own behavior and attitudes. And for Marcus, it reaffirmed the belief he had always carried. Dignity and kindness could change the world, one interaction at a time. This story leaves viewers with a sense of inspiration and hope. It shows how one person's grace and composure can turn a moment of injustice into a powerful lesson in humanity. Marcus's unwavering strength in the face of prejudice serves as a reminder that standing tall in the face of adversity can leave a lasting impact on those around us.